Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrive by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 169, we sit down with Stephanie Hall, candidate for Fishers Island Town Justice and Southold Town Board. In our conversation, Stephanie talks about her connection to Fishers Island and how her background in science and public service has influenced her approach to community leadership. With more than 35 years of experience as a human geneticist, much of it at Pfizer, she brings an analytical and collaborative perspective to local issues. We discuss her work as a Fire District Commissioner, her role as co-chair of the Fishers Island Seagrass Management Coalition, and her ideas for strengthening ties between Fishers Island and Southold. Stephanie also shares her thoughts on environmental stewardship, growth, preservation, and her vision for the community's future. So I hope you enjoy episode 169 with Stephanie Hall. This episode was recorded September 19th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you on today.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, definitely. And so in the beginning, I usually like to start off with a little bit about your background. Can you tell me a little bit about your early life and where you grew up and what first sparked your interest in science and community service?
Yes, I grew up in a naval family, and we moved around to several naval bases when I was young, but our family eventually settled in Montville, Connecticut, where my parents bought a small farm while I was in grade school, and this is where I was raised along with my sisters. My interest in science probably was influenced by several scientists in my father's family. My dad was a nuclear physicist, so there were role models for me, but I was the only geneticist in the family. And I initially planned to be a physician, but discovered a talent for the lab and decided to pursue medical research instead.
Mm-hmm. And just coming out of high school, did you know that you wanted to go into that field as well?
When I was in high school, I wanted to be a physician,
mm-hmm.
and that's what I was planning for. But while I was in college, I had an independent study in the
mm-hmm.
lab, and it was, the talent for the lab was observed, and,
mm-hmm.
I was encouraged to pursue that. But always in the back of my mind thought, well, I may still want to be a doctor, but
yes.
I think medical research has been a good compromise for me, and I've had a really satisfying career as a scientist.
Yes. And now, what brought you to Fishers Island, and what has your personal connection to the island been over those years?
Well, my connection to Fishers Island, my husband began working for a landscaping business on Fishers Island in the early 1990s. And it was during a time when folks were trying to increase the year-round population. So they asked if we might be interested in living on the island. And I was already working at Pfizer in Groton, Connecticut, but was told there was a 5:45 a.m. ferry that could get me to work. So we decided to give it a try, and we lived on the island as year-round residents ever since. I've raised 2 sons on the island, and I've been involved in volunteer activities, including the Board of Education, and as a fire commissioner, along with other organizations on the island.
Yes. And just from getting your job and working from Fishers Island, just thinking back over your time here, what changes on Fishers Island or in the Southold town have stood out most to you?
On Fishers Island, the one big change has been the loss of young families. Some of this is to be expected as we're all aging, but the challenge is that housing costs are so high. It's difficult for young adults to find suitable housing for to raise families. It's really cost prohibitive, and so that is one thing that is really a great concern to me, is the loss of young families. When I first moved to the island in the early 90s, the population was more than double what it is now. There was over 500 year-round residents. We're currently at 220 about. And like I said, there were lots of young families, and now they just can't afford to be there, to live there. Some will work there, and so they're commuting. They do, they commute to the island for work, but it's hard for them to live in the community. And we really need young families in the community.
Yes. Well, you don't want that year-round population shrinking more and then just having part-time summer, because then are the schools do the children go to school in Connecticut, or are they still?
No, the school is K through 12.
Okay.
And it has a magnet program. So what happens is students from Connecticut will actually attend Fishers Island School. It's about half of the student population is comprised of Fishers Island students, and the other half are these magnet students from Connecticut. And that's in order to, maintain the class size that's needed.
And have you been over would you come over and visit Southold town as well, over here on the mainland, just over your time living on Fishers Island?
Oh, I have come to Southold. Yeah. When I first lived on the island and worked at Pfizer, a woman that I worked with had a house in East Marion, and so we would come here in the summer occasionally. So that was my first exposure to Southold. But I have attended meetings in Southold over the years, and I've noticed some change here as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we do face similar challenges. I've attended, several meetings, combined meetings with Southold and Fishers Island officials, and discovered that we are facing similar challenges, which is very interesting to me. I think we can learn from each other and share experiences and try to solve them together. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for this position.
Yes, no, definitely. And just to go into a little bit of your work with Pfizer, you spent 35 years as a human geneticist, much of it at Pfizer. How has that scientific background shaped the way you look at problem solving in community life?
As a research scientist, we're always trying to develop novel solutions in the lab. So I have a lot of experience developing proposals for novel solutions and modeling them to nominate those that have the best chance of success. So I would use the same process for problem solving of community issues. And I feel like I have a lot of experience in that process.
Yes. And your research experience spans Alzheimer's, oncology, and autoimmune diseases. What lessons from that work do you think translate to leadership in local government?
I would say that the most important lesson from my research experience that can translate to leadership in local government is the process by which scientists develop and execute their research projects. It's typically done in groups of specialists where diversity of thought is a real benefit. Team members share ideas and opinions, and the proposal undergoes peer review. The benefit of this process is that actions are carefully reviewed by each team member so that all aspects of the issue are considered. And I'm comfortable with this approach, and I've witnessed its robust outcomes.
And then on Fishers Island, you also serve as a fire district commissioner. What has that role taught you about public safety and the challenges of running essential community services in a small, remote place?
As you might imagine, there are many challenges. The biggest challenge we're currently facing is manpower. As I mentioned, our year-round population is decreasing to critically low numbers, and we don't have large numbers in our volunteer fire department. And at some point, we may need to consider planning for a paid department to provide services, but it's not something that we really want to see happen. And then maintaining equipment on a remote island is also really challenging at times. We can't just sort of contract services from the next town over. We have to make sure that all of the gear is, well maintained and all the time. So that can be very challenging.
Was that something that you felt was important for you to step into and get involved in, even though it probably, just like I've interviewed people over here that are involved in the fire department, and it is time consuming, but I think we have, like you said, similar issues over here with needing more manpower over here too.
You do? Yeah. It isn't something that I ever expected to do, but a lot of times you're asked to step into a role because there just isn't anyone else that is available to do it. I had been an MRT in the fire department many years ago, but sadly they didn't continue supporting that program. It's a medical response technician is what MRT stands for, and so it's a step down from an EMT. And so I had trained and was participating in the fire department in that capacity, but they needed fire commissioners, and they asked if I would consider becoming a fire commissioner, and I said yes. And I've learned a lot, in that role, and I'm glad that I accepted it.
Yes, and you're also co-chair of the Fishers Island Seagrass Management Coalition. You've been deeply involved in environmental stewardship. What are the biggest challenges to protecting our marine environment, and how can the town support that work?
Some of the biggest challenges to our marine environment are climate change, habitat destruction, overfishing, and loss of biodiversity. Many of these threats are caused by human activity. So the more education that can be shared about this will help improve it. The town is already providing some support in that when it receives an application for dock construction, the Fishers Island Seagrass Management Coalition, or I will probably call it FISM at some point, is contacted so that they can provide feedback and information to ensure that the new structure doesn't pose a threat to seagrass. So that's already happening, which is great. It's a big help for all involved, and I think it's a great example of how local government can bring interested parties together and have a positive environmental impact.
Yes.
So if the town of Southold continues to do that, or if they help us in sort of sharing information and educating folks about the importance of seagrass, I think that's also a benefit.
Yes, oh, definitely. And I think you mentioned a little earlier, but what motivated you to run for both Southold Town Board and Fishers Island Town Justice at this time?
So, my scientific career is winding down, and I was considering my next steps, and this opportunity came to my attention. And it's a way for me to serve my community, a community that I love and where I've raised my family. And I'm deeply concerned, and I've mentioned this already, about the decrease in our year-round population. And I really would like to try to do something about it. And if I can, I hope that if I'm elected, I'll be able to improve this situation somehow.
Yes. And you've spoken about wanting to strengthen ties between Fishers Island and the rest of Southold. What practical steps would you like to see to make that happen?
Yes, I have become aware that Fishers Island and Southold face similar challenges. And historically, there's been a Town Fathers Day held on the island where representatives from Southold government come to the island. It's typically occurs in August. And I wouldn't want to eliminate that because I think, it's historically, it's a, great event. People really look forward to it. But, I would like to encourage more frequent in-person touchpoint meetings, either hosted by Southold or Fishers Island, because I believe these types of interactions can foster cross-fertilization of ideas, potential solutions, and the sharing of learnings with each other. So, I don't know what the frequency of those meetings could be, but I'd like to see at least one or two more meetings per year where, we get groups together, maybe working groups that, of local experts on a subject matter that can really, talk with each other and share information. I think that would be a good start.
Yeah, that
would strengthen the ties between Southold and Fishers Island.
Yeah, I think it's usually the one time a year that it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it'd be nice to have more.
Yeah, it
meetings
just doesn't seem to be enough.
Yes.
And I think it could help.
Yes, and Southold has been experiencing shifts in demographics, like you've mentioned, and also development pressures. How do you think the town should balance growth and preserving its character and environment?
That's a great question. I think one way to achieve a balance is to create a long-term vision for the town that includes community engagement to empower its residents, but to also include environmental considerations in the strategy, like ways to invest in green technologies and the protection of natural assets. To preserve its character, again, engaging the community to find ways to highlight local culture and traditions, possibly through the creation of events to celebrate them. I think those are, a couple ideas that come to mind.
Yes. And do you see, for preserving the environment on Fishers Island, do you worry about sea level rise or?
We do. We do worry about it, and it is something that folks are beginning to talk about. I don't know that they're really organizing a plan yet. I think it's early days, but they have had several meetings to talk about it. So they're starting to, I think, develop a plan for this. Yeah, it's definitely, something that we need to be concerned about.
Yeah. Because I haven't been over there. Haven't been over to Fishers Island, but could you describe even what it's like with summer months compared to winter? Are there a lot of businesses open in the winter time?
No, it's a very it actually doesn't change that much. Interestingly enough, I mean, there are a lot more folks that are on the island in the summer months. There are limited businesses. There's a couple of seasonal gift shops. There's a grocery store, a liquor store. There's just the basics.
Yes.
I think one there's the Pequot, the bar restaurant, and then the Legion, the American Legion. So it doesn't really change that much. The seasons certainly do, and the number of individuals on the island definitely changes. In the winter, it's very quiet. There's just a few hundred of the local residents. But in terms of business, there's just really not a lot. I think that's what's so nice about the island is it's very natural, and there isn't a lot of development there.
Do you know, over your time living there, what would you say what you enjoy most about living on the island?
Well, I used to tell my coworkers at Pfizer that I start my day on the water and I end my day on the water. And I've seen the most incredible sunrises and sunsets. The logistics of getting to and from the island can be very challenging. And, the cost of living is a lot higher than other places. But it's a beautiful place to live. And, I've raised my sons there. And what I really enjoy is that when they were young boys and bored, instead of, getting on their computers, they would pick up a fishing pole or a surfboard and, go fishing, go surfing. They were out of doors and, enjoying, our marine environment.
Yes. Definitely. It's
a special place. It is.
Yes.
It is.
And I think just as we go into election season, or we're probably already in election season, but if elected, what would you hope your lasting contribution to Southold Town and Fishers Island in particular would be?
Well, if I'm privileged enough to be elected and given the opportunity to serve our communities, I hope that I'd be able to make a meaningful contribution. Impacting awareness around the importance of protecting seagrass would be an initial priority and benefit both communities. If I can implement a strategic plan to attract and retain young families, that would impact the future viability of the year-round population of Fishers Island. And I would be very proud to have that as a legacy.
Yes. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story and all the work you've done and continue to do on Fishers Island. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks, Chris. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 169 with Stephanie Hall. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.